Hello, women who want to eat healthy and get great results for getting slender for good, getting slender in a way that actually makes you healthier and actually lasts, like is sustainable, right? That's not what most of us are getting when we go on a diet these days. And I'm on a mission to help women understand why this is and what you can do completely differently that makes so much sense and has such great results. It's Dr. Ginny Trierweiler here, and I love to help women get this breakthrough because it was so huge for me. And today I want to discuss this question of, what do I feel like eating? You ever go in the kitchen or go to a restaurant and look at the menu? What do I feel like? What do I feel like? It's kind of an interesting approach to eating, and I think it's producing really lousy results for us, right? And that's what I wanted to talk about today, how our approach to eating our cultural approach that's so common these days can be exactly the opposite of what we need. I'm just looking. Oh yeah, I can't do anything about that. That is sun. Sorry about all the shadows on my face. Anyway, throughout human history, most of human history, whatever tasted good tended to be best for our survival. So it's very natural and understandable for us to look for whatever tastes good. And then there's this extra cultural piece added on of what would be the most special and exciting right now. I don't think that's the way human beings have tended to approach eating, but it's certainly the way I was approaching eating. I need something super special and exciting. I felt that way about lunch, and I felt that way about the between lunch and dinner snack. Like, oh, what would be extra special and exciting? And I felt that way about dinner and the wine that went with dinner, etc. Right? And so part of what's happening is what's going on in our culture and how it's hijacking our primitive survival-oriented brain. So I really try to arm other women against this risk of approaching eating in a way that's going to keep leading to lousy results, even for those of us who feel like, I really study this stuff and I really try hard to eat healthy, and I feel like I eat pretty healthy, but I'm getting lousy results. Do you ever feel like that? So it's super understandable that human beings are going to seek out whatever tastes good. And that has worked for our survival throughout human history. But then our environment changed, and we are in trouble with this approach now. So the food-like substances that are designed to be the most pleasurable are now often the least nutritious. And that's the opposite of what was happening throughout human history. So now that we're in this industrial food environment, and especially since some of the changes that happened as the United States, for example, got involved with establishing nutrition standards, some things got really messed up in our food environment, right? So now most of the food in the grocery store, 80%, has added sugar or sweeteners, which is terrible for our health. It's way, way, way more sugar and sweetener than human beings are meant to eat, than our bodies can tolerate. But our tongue and our brain says, that's good, right? Most of the food people eat in the United States now is highly processed. It's not real food anymore. It's been highly processed into something that's very pleasing, that has calories, but doesn't have a lot of nutrition. So the last statistic I saw, I think I'm seeing that it's been increasing since then, but the last statistic I saw is 57% of the food Americans are eating is highly processed food-like substances. So really missing a lot of the things that give it nutrition. I know the things I was really excited about, like one of the things I was doing for years is, drinking wine in place of having other things like fruit, right? So that's a highly processed substance as compared with eating a piece of whole fruit, right? I was also eating, one thing I did for years is instead of having dinner, I would have popcorn. And my idea was, this has got a lot of fiber. I think it's something that's good for me. But we kind of know that's a snack food. There's not a whole lot of vitamins and minerals in that food. And we kind of know it's the kind of food we keep going and going and going eating. Like we eat in an obsessive kind of way. Basically, after lunchtime, I had resolved that I'm going to do these highly processed, non-nutritious things, and I'm going to stay away from real food. I didn't think of it that way, but what I thought of is you've done that too with the popcorn, Sam. Good to see you here. Yeah, please let me know if you're here. I can't apparently see how many people are here with me. So yeah, say hello. Tell me if this is a topic that you've experienced. If you've experienced this feeling of, what do I feel like eating right now? Wandering around the kitchen. What would be special and exciting? So that's what I got really devoted to, is I need the most special, exciting stuff. So I want to talk about the risk of that kind of approach. It was so much bigger than I realized for a long time, because it's such a normalized approach in our society. So I really want to help you question some of the approaches in our society that could be leading to so much worse results. You too, Emily, good to see you here. Popcorn, yeah. I remember once I used to go to the movies, like I would find a movie to go to because I just wanted to sit and eat that giant thing of popcorn. And it was going to take the place of dinner. And I remember once thinking, this is a huge amount of popcorn. This doesn't make sense, probably. Like, what if I try to pay attention and mindfully notice where I feel full? And it was like the top inch. And I felt full. I thought, yep, full. And then I kept going all the way to the bottom. And then I thought about going and getting a refill, right? So there's something about a food like that that looks like, for me, what I realize now is if I keep feeling like eating and eating and eating, that's probably proof that what I was eating wasn't nutritious. My brain is saying, I don't get any nutrition out of that, so keep going. Hey, Allison. Okay, I'm glad you can relate to this. Good to see you here. All right. We're rocking the house now. All right. So the fact that we're eating mostly foods that are food-like substances that are low nutrition, that are highly processed, right? I talk about chip niffles, cravingful, highly processed, non-nutritious food-like substances. Like, I love those. Those were my priority. They felt special. They felt exciting. They were what I was going for. And I would decide I'm not going to eat real food right now. I didn't think of it this way exactly, but I'm going to eat popcorn instead of food. I'm going to drink alcohol instead of eating. So this idea that all I have to do is manage the calories within a certain number, and then I can sort of eat and drink what I feel like eating, what I feel like. So I want to question this. What do I feel like eating right now? If I catch myself wandering around the kitchen, what do I feel like right now? What would scratch this itch I have? It's a very encouraged attitude in our society, but I see it as a problem now. So I'm going to tell you more about that. Now, eating mostly highly processed, non-nutritious food-like substances is causing serious illness in our society nowadays. So it's causing most of the chronic diseases that people think of as normal. We talked about normal last week, causing most of the chronic diseases that people develop as we age. So it causes serious disruption to our insulin functioning. It causes insulin resistance and what we call metabolic syndrome. So what we see is excess weight gain. We see insulin resistance, we see elevated blood pressure, we see high cholesterol, we see high triglycerides. Those things all go with heart disease, right? So many people by their 60s and 70s are developing heart disease in this society, thinking this is just normal part of aging. It's just normal because of the way we're eating. We also see elevated sugar levels, prediabetes, and diabetes type 2. Right? Just thinking it's normal, and it's normal only because of the way we're eating. And it's also causing excess weight gain and fat storage. So most people in United States society now, and this applies to North America and more around the world, But it's also causing excess weight gain and excess fat storage. And I was developing a number of these things, right? So what's going on with this thought? What do I feel like eating? It's an indication, this is how I want you to think about it. It's an indication that our primitive brain, our survival brain, is getting hijacked. I just saw a little spinning. Is my internet acting weird? Let's see if there's anything I can get out of. No, I'm not in anything. All right, hopefully that's going to work. So our primitive brain is getting hijacked in our current environment, so that what tastes the most exciting and the most special is often of the least nutritional value, maybe even toxic to our system in terms of causing this insulin resistance thing. So it looks like the situation we're in our society of eating an abundance of low nutrition foods is causing a biological switch to flip in our bodies, sort of like we see with a bear going into hibernation. So a bear going into hibernation, it shouldn't actually feel hungry, right? Based on how much it's been eating, but suddenly it gets hungrier and hungrier, like, oh my God, I'm starving, right? So if you live around bears during this time of year, you have to be careful about running into them, like if you're out by the trash, etc., because they feel like they're starving. And so this is what we're finding in our society is people are having this hunger that feels out of control, that feels insatiable, that feels like, I don't know, I'm hungry. Like after dinner, if you're feeling hungry, maybe you didn't eat enough nutritious food. Maybe you've been eating too much non-nutritious food and it's driving this hunger. And we talked about that a little before, but it looks like eating too much non-nutritious stuff is causing a switch to get flipped in our bodies. So we become like bears getting ready to hibernate. Man, I'm hungry and I'm foraging. So for me, the whole phrase, what do I feel like eating, goes along with this kind of insatiable hunger foraging behavior. I'm wandering around the kitchen. What would be good to eat right now? What would feel good? What would scratch this itch? What would be most special and exciting? And this biological switch, as it gets flipped, leads to weight gain. So we see that with bears, right? They're going to gain a whole bunch of weight and store a whole bunch of fat before they hibernate. It leads to diabetes. So bears develop like a diabetic condition that they're going to use to survive during these months that they're going to sleep and they're not going to have access to food and water. It changes our heart functioning. It changes our blood pressure, right? It changes our cholesterol and our triglycerides. If we were heading into hibernation, this would be beneficial for us. We would use all that. But because we're not heading into hibernation, we're going to go and eat again this way tomorrow. It's really causing serious problems for us. By the way, if you want to learn more about this stuff, I encourage you to get my free roadmap to sustainable weight loss after 40. You can just go to slenderforgood.com and it will really help you understand more about what is really messed up in our food environment that we really want to be cautious about. And it'll really help you understand why dieting is not the solution. It's probably making things worse. And when we know better, we do better. So I'd love for you to get that free roadmap, slenderforgood.com. So most of our so-called food in our environment now is non-nutritious. I said there's a bunch of HPs, so it's highly processed. It's highly profitable. What's the other one? I can't remember the other thing that I think with the HPs. I don't think highly poisonous was it. Highly processed and highly profitable for the food environment. So that's most of what's in our food environment, and it's exciting, right? It's associated with weight gain and chronic illness, but it's the most exciting special stuff out there. So most of it is designed to actually be addictive. And I want to tell you what I mean by that. Because a lot of people don't realize if you find yourself craving something that's not good for you, it may be that that's causing an addictive response. That's what cravings are. Ooh, I want more of that. So what's happening is anything that feels really exciting is craving an addiction response. It's causing an excess dopamine response. So I always make this facial expression. Oh, and I always remember a certain Star Trek Next Generation episode where they were getting, where somebody's getting people on the Enterprise addicted to a game, and you can watch the addiction response on their face as they're playing this game that feeds into their eyes. Their eyes move, and you can see when they get the dopamine response, it's like, ah. And it's very natural that if you find something that feels like that, you're going to want more. That's what an excess dopamine response does, is it tells you that was important, get more. So it's a way that our primitive brain, our survival brain gets hijacked into thinking that thing seemed important. How are you going to get more of that? So anytime I've got a food or a drink that I feel that excited about, I'm going to look at it more carefully now. Instead of driving towards how do I get more of that, I'm going to stop. Wait a minute. I'm wanting more and more and more of this. That may be a sign it's addictive. It may be a sign it's non-nutritious. It may be a sign it's actually bad for me, right? So I believe in eating things that are pleasurable. I think it makes a difference to enjoy our food. But the extra pleasurable, non-nutritious stuff that we get really excited about is something I'm going to feel suspicious about. I'm going to notice it. I'm going to pay attention when I feel like more. I want more. That was really exciting. I'm going to ask myself, are you having an excess dopamine response here? Is this something to actually step away from? Right? So I have friends in the alcohol marketing industry. I have friends in the food marketing industry, somebody who worked in a chocolate factory. And they talk about how we sit around figuring out, number one, how to make this physically addictive so people will keep buying it, right? That's best for our profits. And the next thing we sit around and do is think about how to market it so that more people will get addicted to this thing and they'll feel okay about it, right? So people like me who are reading all the packages and really trying to eat healthy, people like my clients, same thing. They're going to package it so it talks about the antioxidants. It talks about some beneficial element that's in there. It doesn't tell you that it's 10 times more destructive than it is beneficial, because they don't want us to think about that, right? They don't have to tell us that. We have to get knowledgeable about this. We have to stand against that kind of addiction approach to eating, right? So when you feel this more, I want more, I'm foraging, I'm wandering around the kitchen, I'm looking for something really special. What do I feel like eating? What do I feel like drinking? We really want to be noticing this may be a sign this is something that's not good for me. If you eat something that's actually nutritious, you get a different kind of pleasure, right? And you get a different kind of calorie. You can feel it as you start paying attention to it. Like, I'm getting some energy from this, and I still feel more energized an hour later instead of, oh, like when you eat sugar, right? Or you eat a whole bunch of non-nutritious stuff, you might get a burst of energy from those calories, and then you might get a crash. What actually happens when we eat non-nutritious stuff is we become couch potatoes. And this has to do with what's happening with the leptin in our system. So when you eat something that is calories but not nutrition, you can get a boost of energy. It feels like energy, right? And then you get a crash and feel like laying around on the couch. That's a sign that wasn't food. That wasn't nutritious, right? So the boost kind of reaction in your brain is something to start noticing, like, maybe that's actually not something I want. What do I feel like? What would be special and exciting? It was getting me in big trouble. And you guys have heard my story, but I was not only overindulging in eating and drinking things that weren't good for me at night, but I was devoted to it. It was my identity. I eat and drink the most special stuff. I thought it was self-care and self-love. And I had to start noticing maybe this is indulgence, and that's not the same as self-care and self-love. But our culture's always telling us this is a great way of loving yourself. You know, a bottle of wine with your dinner, right? This giant steak on your plate and a tiny amount of vegetables. This is a great way of eating. This is self-care. This is self-love. So I really had to start questioning my whole definition of self-care and self-love and distinguish it from overindulging. Does that make sense to you guys? Looks like a few people are here. So it's another thing that's really interesting about when we're going for a dopamine rush, we're not thinking that, we're going for pleasure, right? I want to enjoy this. I want it to be special. So every night, between lunch and dinner, and every dinner, I remember so much. I spent a couple of years, like a lot of restaurant meals and a lot of wine, and just really excited about eating and drinking this way, and about learning to distinguish between different wines and getting the most special chocolate and stuff. And so special kind of seeking, it's surprising how often it was disappointing me, right? It's like, that wasn't that good. That wasn't that special. Plus, I was feeling lousy in the middle of the night. In the morning, I was feeling less and less energy. So it's because an excess dopamine response, the extra special, exciting stuff that feels like, whoa, that was awesome, right? That extra dopamine response drives us to want more of the dopamine response. We want more. And so one thing that happens when you get into an addictive food, an addictive drug, alcohol, is we want more and we feel less and less pleasure from it, right? So the feeling of excess dopamine rush at first feels like pleasure. It cues your brain, that seemed important, get more. And then we just feel less and less pleasure, right? It drives cravings and wanting more than it drives pleasure. And I knew this because I studied neuropsychology. And as I started noticing how this related to my eating and drinking, I started getting mad. Like, this is stealing my health. This is causing this tremendous excess weight gain. It's causing me to eat more and more and drink more and more of things that aren't actually good for my body, and to feel really sad and worried about not having them, and to have cravings all the time for things that aren't good for me. Yes, Emily, indulgence is not self-care. I know this is a good one to write down and think about on a regular basis. When I'm saying to myself, I deserve this, we'll do a talk on that soon. Am I saying I deserve something good for me, or I deserve something bad for me? What do I mean? Right? So my whole commitment to being as indulgent as possible is something I started questioning. And it makes me cry to think about how many years I spent looking for the most indulgent stuff and how it was stealing my health, to the point where I could barely walk anymore, right? Resonates with you big time. Yes, almost always disappointed once you get the thing you've been craving. Yes, it drives wanting. All right, so cravings suck. And once I started getting really mad about having cravings all the time for things that weren't good for me, then I started fighting my way out of that situation. So it causes, so this food-like stuff, this approach, what do I feel like eating? What would be special and exciting right now? Drives having more cravings, drives eating and drinking more things that are not nutritious, and it crowds out the things that are actually nutritious for you. So we end up overfed and undernourished. It's terrible, right? Our body keeps telling us we're hungry because we're not actually getting the nutrition that we need when we eat. So bottom line for me, I was craving stuff that wasn't good for me, and I was craving it with a vengeance, and it was part of my identity, and it felt really important. That feeling of importance is what dopamine does. When you get a big dopamine rush, whoa, that was good, your brain says, this seems important. Figure out where you got it and where you're going to get it again tomorrow. So this is what I mean by our brain being hijacked. You might have a feeling like there's a whole bunch of stuff that I would really miss, and I hope you're not going to tell me I can't have it anymore. That's really scary to me. We don't feel that way about things that are actually beneficial for us. We feel that way about things that give an excess dopamine rush and cause cravings. So getting mad about having cravings helped me, right? I wish cauliflower and broccoli gave a big dopamine hit. Yes. What are good dopamine hits? Yeah. If they gave a big dopamine hit, they'd be detrimental to us, right? The big dopamine hit is a sign something's addictive. Yeah. So the nutritious stuff at that point in my life seemed boring, right? And that's partly even your taste buds. Your brain gets hijacked. This is the good stuff. Get more of that. And even your taste buds get messed up. The good thing is those start to heal, and you replace all your taste buds over the course of a couple weeks. So my clients will tell me all the time, okay, I'm eating the nutritious foods you're saying. I'm abstaining from the non-nutritious food-like substances that give an excess dopamine hit. And I'm starting to notice that real food tastes really good now. And that like carrots are so much sweeter than I realized, etc., right? Yes, Allison, cravings are a vicious circle, a maddening vicious circle. Getting mad can help. That can be an animating emotion to changing these habits, right? I still might have the idea, but that's self-love, but that's the most enjoyable stuff. I might still have habits and have to fight against certain cultural influences, but the actual physical cravings went away really fast. So which was a relief. So you stop feeding the cravings and they go away. So once I studied the research, I got to look at my notes because I get all disorganized. Once I studied the research and I explored what actually works for eating and health and weight loss, I discovered an eating approach that's simple, it's sensible, it makes sense. It's based on eating abundant, real, nutritious foods. And it involves flipping the switch back to a healthy body and a slender body and getting rid of all these symptoms I had and all this kind of physical decline that was happening. And it's also thoroughly enjoyable. It's not boring at all. Your brain is telling you it's boring because of cultural messages and because of addiction. So once you get out of addiction and you start questioning those cultural messages, I'm not necessarily looking for what's most exciting. It needs to be pleasurable and it needs to be nutritious. And if those are my priorities, the most exciting, special, what do I feel like eating right now stuff is not what I'm going for, right? So learning to eat this way massively changed my life. I always remember the first time I noticed I'm walking like a young woman again and going for a hike in the mountains with my mom. And she said, yeah, you're walking faster than me, and it's the first time in probably 10 years. So in some ways, my body was aging faster than my mom's body was aging. So this massively changed my health and my life and my future when I learned how to crave the good, nutritious, real foods. And it's also massively changed the lives of thousands of other women over 40. Hallelujah. I keep a list of like the ways people describe how they could see that their body was really liking eating nutritious foods, how that became exciting in a different way, right? Like, I get to live such a more active life. I get to look forward to such a brighter future eating this way, and I enjoy it. Every meal I have, I really thoroughly enjoy. It's a different, more moderate kind of pleasure, a slower kind of pleasure. When we're going for a big, fast, big dopamine hit, we are going for addiction and cravings. So once you start to know that, things can really turn around, right? So when I catch myself taking this, what do I feel like approach? It doesn't happen to me very often anymore, but if I catch it, I slow down, I kind of stop and pay attention. I'm looking for something special to eat, something exciting, something that will scratch an itch. this could be trouble, right? So I just really slow down and pay attention to that. Our culture really recommends that approach to eating, and it's messed up. It's not leading us to good results. We want to question it. If I think of human beings, I don't know, 10,000 years ago, I don't think that's how they approached eating. I don't think it's a normal, natural approach to eating. I think it's something that's happened in our culture as our food environment has gotten more highly processed, more addictive, right? And less nourishing. And we are getting all these terrible health results as a result of it. We have to be more kind of aware and alert and make different choices. Instead of what would be most special and exciting. Like, so what do I do instead? I plan out three meals of highly abundant, nutritious foods every day. I have them ready so that it's not super hard, right? I just heat things up lots of times. And I sit and put it on my plate and I go, wow, that looks good. It's not exactly the same, like that kind of dopamine rush, but it is pleasure. And it's a pleasure that gives me a great life, right? So, yeah, the other thing I notice is if I eat something that gives that extra dopamine rush, special kind of pleasure, that dopamine kind of pleasure, and I can't stop at a reasonable point, right? And then I start having cravings the next day. I'm continuing to prove to myself that that wasn't food. That wasn't for me. That doesn't belong in my body, and it causes addiction, right? So if you catch yourself asking, what do I feel like eating right now? Especially if you see yourself foraging like a bear getting ready to hibernate. What could I eat right now? You might be experiencing a change in your insulin function that relates to flipping a switch that you don't want to flip. So we've even got in our society now people who are thin on the outside who have tremendous fatty liver and fat around their organs inside. I'm thinking about somebody in particular who's just a beautiful woman and stays slender, looks good in clothes, but eats a lot of candy and junk food and is really devoted to it and feels like it's really important. And I do worry about what's going on inside her body. So just because we can't see it doesn't mean it's not happening, right? So if you catch yourself doing that, you might be flipping a switch, like a bear preparing for hibernation, and it might be leading to more hunger, more foraging, more eating of junky stuff, more chronic illness, and excess weight. So this topic also relates to emotional eating, which I'll talk about soon. And I'm going to be launching a podcast soon. So if you're not signed up on my mailing list to get notifications of what's going on, sign up on my mailing list at slenderforgood.com. And that will also get you a copy of the Roadmap to Sustainable Weight Loss. So look, we can live our best life when we learn to eat in a way that isn't exactly how our society is leading us to eat. We can eat in a way that's really enjoyable, that makes sense, that gives us the best health for as long as possible, that really, we can put things in our body that really nourish it and live our best life. And you deserve that. That's my message to you, all right? We deserve better than what would give me the biggest dopamine hit right now. We deserve the best life, right? All right. Thank you guys for joining me. I'm going to see if I missed any of your comments. I'm glad you were here. See you next time.